I'm Emily, and I will never forget the day my family tried to erase both me and my grandfather in front of hundreds of guests. My billionaire grandfather, William, flew 6 hours across the country just to attend my brother Michael's wedding. At 82, his body was fragile, but his dignity remained intact. Still, the moment he arrived, my parents pushed him behind the trash bins, treating him like an unwanted attendee instead of the man who built our family's name. My mother's voice cut sharply through the air. She said that old beggar would embarrass us. Anger burned in my chest. When I spoke up, her hand struck my face. Shock rippled through the crowd. Before I could react, she told me to leave. I staggered toward the gates, humiliated, my eyes stinging with tears. 20 minutes later, I heard the roar of engines, and when his private jet touched down, everything shifted. The spring sun over Napa Valley felt too bright as I walked toward the vineyard entrance, almost mocking me. My heels echoed against the cobblestones, each step reinforcing that I didn't belong. Olive trees lined the path, roses wrapped around the archway, and servers moved smoothly through the space with trays of champagne. No one offered me a glass. I caught my reflection in a polished glass door. My forest green dress hung awkwardly, secondhand from a thrift store back in Boston. My hair was loose, slightly wind-tossed, freckles visible beneath makeup I hadn't bothered to fix. Surrounded by designer gowns and tailored suits, I looked out of place. Emily? The sound of my name stopped me. My mother, Linda, approached wearing the controlled, calculating smile she used at social events. Her eyes scanned me, shoes, hemline, neckline, like she was assessing damage. Decent? She said at last, as if the word itself offended her. I asked quietly if that was all she had to say. She leaned closer, her perfume sharp. She reminded me I had RSVP'd alone and warned me not to give her a reason to regret letting me in. Then she walked away, laughing too loudly with a guest dressed in sequins. I stood still, gripping my clutch. I hadn't expected warmth, but not even a nod, not even a simple acknowledgement. Then I saw my brother Michael, the favored child. He stood near the olive trees with his college friends, one arm around Olivia, his fiancée, the other loosely holding a glass of whiskey. His laughter carried easily across the patio while I remained unnoticed. I called his name, forcing a smile. He glanced at me briefly, eyes passing over me as if I were a stranger. He said hello without interest, already turning back to his group. Olivia looked at me for a moment. Her ivory lace dress fit her perfectly, her smile polite and distant. Heat rose up my neck. I wanted to leave, but something kept me there, something stubborn. This was my family, damaged as it was, and I refused to disappear quietly. So I stayed near the edge of the gathering, clutching my bag, pretending to look for someone who cared. The truth sat heavy inside me. I was only a guest at my own family's celebration, and perhaps not even that. Through the laughter and the clinking of glasses, I heard tires crunch on gravel. A dark town car slowed near the gates. My heart jumped as the door opened. Grandpa William had arrived. He stepped out carefully, his back slightly bent, his movements measured, but his sharp blue eyes lit up when he saw me. He wore a navy suit that hung loosely on him, a tie slightly askew, shoes polished just enough to show effort. At 82, he shouldn't have traveled this far, but he did it for Michael. He called my name, his voice rough but steady, and said I was the only one worth flying for. My throat tightened. I hurried to him and wrapped my arms around his shoulders. His jacket carried the faint scent of peppermint gum and aftershave. For a brief moment, the wedding noise faded, and it was just us, me and the only person in this family who still truly saw me. When I looked around, no one else reacted. Not my father, Richard, who was focused on the wine list. Not my mother, adjusting her bracelet in the sunlight. Not even Michael, who didn't acknowledge us at all. Then a staff member appeared, clipboard in hand. "This way, sir," the staffer said briskly, motioning toward the far side of the patio. I started to follow, but froze. The path curved past the flower arch, the fountain, and the outdoor kitchen, ending at two flimsy plastic chairs wedged between overflowing trash bins. The hum of the catering vents drowned out the string quartet. My chest tightened. "Excuse me," I called after him. "There must be a mistake." He checked his chart, shrugged, and walked off. I turned to my mother, standing not 20 feet away, sipping champagne like it was air. "Why is Grandpa sitting there?" I demanded. She didn't even blink, her gaze sliding past me as if I weren't worth her attention. Finally, she muttered, "He insisted on coming. I told him he wouldn't enjoy himself. Beggars can't be choosers." I clenched my fists. "He's not a beggar," I said. Her lips tightened, and she stepped closer, her whisper sharp as glass. "That old man will embarrass us. How he talks, how he eats, how he smells. I won't have him ruin Michael's day." I searched her face for any hint of humanity, but found none. She was cold, taut, and unapologetic. I glanced at Grandpa. He sat quietly on the plastic chair, shoulders slouched, pretending not to notice the trash or the judging stares. His hands rested on his cane, knuckles pale. It hit me like a blow. My grandfather, the man who built everything this family owned, treated like garbage at his own grandson's wedding. I realized silence was no longer an option. Waiters ushered guests to tables, crystal glasses clinked, laughter floated across the vineyard. But all I could see was my 82-year-old grandfather by the trash. My hands trembled, yet I stood. I wasn't going to let this go. I tapped my fork against a glass, the sharp chime cutting through the chatter. Conversations paused, faces turned. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking at first. I took a breath, straightened my shoulders, and spoke louder. "I have just one question." I looked directly at my parents. "Why is my grandfather seated by the trash bins while strangers sit at the family table?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, leaning in, curious. Clicking heels announced my mother as she stormed toward me, eyes blazing. "Ungrateful girl," she hissed. Her hand struck my cheek with a sharp crack, the sound echoing like a whip. My skin burned, but the humiliation stung worse. A collective gasp spread through the patio. Someone dropped a fork. Another whispered, "Did she just?" I staggered back, clutching my face, refusing to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. "You don't belong here," my mother spat, venom in every word. "You never did. Get out before you embarrass us more." She snapped her fingers at a nearby staffer. "Escort her out." I swallowed hard, forcing my chin up even as tears blurred my vision. I had only asked for respect for him. I whispered, pointing toward Grandpa William, but no one intervened. My father looked away, fascinated by his cufflinks. Michael shifted but stayed silent. Olivia leaned closer to him, whispering with an unreadable expression. The staffer hesitated, eyes flicking between me and my mother. Her glare hardened, and finally he stepped forward. "It's fine," I said quickly, my voice steady despite the ache in my throat. "I can walk myself out." I turned, heels catching on the gravel, skirt brushing dusty stones. The crowd parted silently, 100 eyes on me. Shame wrapped around me like a second skin. Behind me, my mother's voice carried, cold, ungrateful, just like her grandfather. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But as I reached the patio edge, I felt movement. Grandpa William rose from his chair. Slowly, painfully, he walked toward me and pressed something into my palm. A green silk handkerchief, frayed at the edges, embroidered with the letter E. I closed my fingers around it. My cheeks still burned from the slap, but for the first time that day, I felt seen. But his gesture felt like a promise. For the first time that day, I wasn't entirely alone. I sat on a low stone wall at the vineyard's edge, clutching Grandpa's handkerchief so tightly the embroidery pressed into my skin. The sting from my mother's slap throbbed across my cheek, but worse was the silence. Hundreds of eyes had watched me walk away, marking me as the disgrace. Music and laughter drifted faintly from the patio, almost convincing me I had imagined everything. Until a low, steady rumble reached me, heavier than any engine I'd heard. At first, I thought it was thunder rolling over the valley. Then the ground beneath my heels trembled. Squinting toward the gravel road behind the vineyard, I shielded my eyes from the sun and saw it. A sleek black Rolls-Royce glided into view, catching the golden light of late afternoon. 2 black SUVs followed closely, engines humming in perfect sync. The procession slowed deliberately, the air shifting as if the world itself had paused. Birds stopped mid-flight. The Rolls-Royce stopped just yards away. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out quickly, moving to the rear door. Out stepped Grandpa, not the frail, hunched man from the town car earlier, but William Hale, billionaire founder of Hale Vineyards, whose name was whispered in wine auctions and boardrooms. His suit was perfectly tailored, navy fabric sharp against his frame. Shoes gleamed like mirrors. Sunglasses shaded his eyes, but his posture was unmistakable, straight, confident, unyielding. Two men in dark suits flanked him, scanning the grounds with practiced precision. Security. My mouth fell open. "Grandpa," I whispered, barely able to breathe. He spotted me instantly, paused, slid off his sunglasses deliberately, and met my eyes with clarity and calm. "Well, sweetheart," he said, voice strong, nothing like the rasp from earlier. "Ready to shake things up?" I stood slowly, clutching the handkerchief tighter, heart hammering. What's happening?" He offered his arm, a tight smile curling his lips. "Let's see if your brother remembers who actually owns this land." My knees almost buckled. "Owns this land?" I repeated, stunned. The security men moved toward the side gate, the same gate I'd been shoved through in shame moments earlier. Staff didn't block them. One even held it open, eyes darting nervously to Grandpa. I slipped my hand through Grandpa's arm and let him lead me forward. My heels crunched against gravel, but I didn't stumble. Each step pressed the truth harder against my chest. This wasn't a rented venue. This was his vineyard, his empire. I realized I was about to watch everything I thought I knew unravel before everyone. Music from the reception drifted through the open patio doors as Grandpa and I stepped through the gate. Guests were mid-toast, glasses raised, laughter mingling with the string quartet. My mother's amplified voice rang over the crowd. And of course, none of this would be possible without Michael's vision, ambition, and dedication. Her words snapped like glass underfoot when she saw who entered. Grandpa didn't hesitate. His cane tapped sharply against the stone floor as he crossed the patio, flanked by his security shadows. Conversations died mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze. My father's jaw slackened. Michael's face paled. Olivia clutched his arm as though she'd seen a ghost. Grandpa reached the low platform beside the quartet. Without a word, he gently took the microphone from my mother's hand. She didn't resist, just stared at him, wide-eyed, as if the air had been stolen from her lungs. Grandpa faced the crowd, his voice calm but authoritative. "I wasn't going to say anything," he began. "After all, it's a wedding, a day for joy, a day for love. But sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness. I think it's time the truth was known." A murmur ran through the guests. My father fidgeted, tugging at his collar. Michael stared at his shoes. Grandpa's eyes swept the room, steady, commanding. "I built this vineyard with my own hands. I named it after my late wife, Carmen. I gave it to this family, trusting it would be cared for. But today, no one welcomed me. No one asked where I should sit. Instead, I was placed beside trash bins, because that was the message. They treated me like I was disposable." A gasp rose from the back. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Grandpa's gaze shifted cold and deliberate toward my parents, sending a message loud and clear. My mother found her voice at last. "William, please, you're making a scene. Don't ruin Michael's day." Grandpa's cane slammed against the stage, silencing her. The sharp crack echoed like thunder. "Ruin it? No. What ruins a day is cruelty disguised as pride. What ruins a family is greed hidden behind champagne flutes. You think I'm the embarrassment?" His voice rose, firm, commanding. "No. The embarrassment is yours." He turned toward me, eyes softening. "I built this empire for her," he said, pointing directly at me. "Not for you." The room seemed to inhale. Forks clinked against plates as hands trembled. Olivia's parents exchanged startled glances. Every head turned toward me, standing near the arch in half-shadow. "Her," Michael's voice cracked, disbelief clear. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Grandpa said, steel in his tone. "She was the only one who visited me when I was sick, the only one who cared while the rest of you." His gaze swept across my parents, then Michael. "We're too busy polishing reputations. She sat with me through long nights while you lied. She's nothing, yet she is everything you are not." Grandpa's voice boomed, cutting my mother off. The crowd was silent, but not politely, sharp, breathless, heavy. All eyes were on me. My cheeks still burned from the slap, but shame was gone, replaced by a quiet strength, anchored by the green silk handkerchief in my hand. He lifted the microphone higher, his words slicing through the hall. "You wanted to bury me behind the trash. Instead, you buried yourselves. The truth doesn't rot in the dark. It waits. And now it's here." The air thickened. Guests froze, caught between disbelief and dread. Grandpa reached into his blazer and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope notarized. "This," he said, steady, "is the will. The true will. Signed, dated, witnessed, long before any of you tried to twist it." Gasps swept through the room. My father lurched, face pale. That's not possible. You changed it months later. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. Don't I? He opened the envelope deliberately, sliding out heavy papers dated 2 months before his illness, long before pneumonia, long before sedation, when his mind was sharp and hand steady. He lifted a page. Even from my place, I recognized the bold, sweeping signature. You told the lawyer I was unfit. Grandpa's voice cracked like a whip. You forged a medical affidavit while I lay in a hospital bed, trusting you. You stole, not from me, from her. Dozens of eyes swung toward me. My breath caught. Before anyone could speak, the back doors creaked open. A figure in a gray hoodie stepped inside. My pulse leapt. It was Mateo, a former vineyard manager who disappeared after Michael restructured the staff. He walked forward, holding a USB drive that glinted in the light. I think you'll want to see this, he said, voice steady though hands trembled. Grandpa nodded. One of his security men plugged the drive into the reception projector. The screen flickered, then came to life. The footage was grainy but clear. The fermentation chamber, timestamp past midnight. Michael slipped inside, glancing over his shoulder. In his hand, a container. He moved to one of the steel tanks, unscrewed the cap, and poured. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is that?" "Yes," Mateo said. "Industrial solvent. He paid me $10,000 to call it an accident. I couldn't live with that." On the screen, Michael froze mid-pour. His face, illuminated by the security camera, was undeniable. Olivia gasped, covering her mouth. "Michael, no," she whispered. Michael jumped to his feet, color draining. "This is a setup, a family vendetta." "Sit down," snapped a shareholder from the front row, voice sharp as a hammer. "This is felony-level sabotage." My mother's face twisted. "You don't understand. We were protecting the brand, protecting the family name." "No," I said, stepping forward, my voice ringing clear across the hall. "You were protecting your ego. You were willing to poison everything, even Grandma's last blend, just to keep control." Silence followed. Not the awkward kind, but the heavy, final kind that wraps chains around the guilty. Grandpa's voice cut through. "I trusted this family. I entrusted this vineyard to your care, and you repaid me with lies, forged documents, and sabotage. Enough." He turned to the attorney at his side. The man adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and held up a leather folder. "Effective immediately," the lawyer read, voice firm, "William Hale has transferred all legal authority and controlling interest in Hale Vineyards to his granddaughter, Emily Hale. The land, the winery, and associated assets are secured under her name." The words hit like thunder. Guests gasped. Some even applauded softly. But my family, my so-called family, sat stricken. My father's lips moved soundlessly. My mother gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white. Michael looked as if the floor had been ripped from beneath him. Grandpa lifted his cane, pointing at them. "You tried to erase me. You tried to erase her. But the truth doesn't bend. No matter how much money you throw at it, it doesn't change reality." I stood there, handkerchief still clenched, feeling the shame of earlier burn away, replaced with something fierce and unshakable. For the first time, I wasn't the outcast. I was the heir. The reception hall had become a graveyard of broken illusions. Guests shifted uneasily in their chairs, whispers slithering like smoke. The string quartet had stopped, instruments resting silently in their laps. Michael erupted first. He shot up from his chair, voice wild. "This is insane. It's all lies. She set me up. Emily doesn't deserve anything. She's always been jealous of me. Mom, tell them. Tell them." Linda rose beside him, pearl necklace trembling. "Of course she's jealous. She has nothing. She's always been nothing. William, this is madness. You're destroying your own family." I stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. "No, Mom, you destroyed this family the moment you chose appearances over love. You slapped me in front of everyone because I defended him. You treated Grandpa like garbage because you thought he was powerless. That's who you are." Her eyes narrowed, venom in her words. "You still don't belong, Emily. You never did." Something inside me hardened. I lifted my chin, meeting her glare. "You're wrong. I used to think I was the failure, the outsider, the shame of this family. But now I see clearly. I was never the embarrassment. You were." A collective gasp swept the hall. One guest clutched her pearls, shaking her head in disbelief. Another muttered, "She's right." Richard, my father, finally stirred, voice thin and desperate. "Stop this. You'll destroy us all. Emily, think about what you're doing." I turned to him, throat tight but words firm. I've thought about it all night, all my life. I'm done carrying the weight of your lies. Michael's chair screeched as he lunged toward me, fists clenched. One of Grandpa's security men intercepted him immediately, placing a firm hand against his chest. "Sit down, sir," the guard said flatly. Michael froze, breath ragged, eyes darting wildly as if searching for an escape. Olivia, his bride-to-be, sat pale and trembling. "Michael? Tell me it isn't true," she whispered, mascara streaking her cheeks. But he said nothing. His silence spoke louder than any confession. Across the room, Olivia's father rose abruptly, voice cold. "Get the car." His eyes flicked to Michael, full of disgust. "We're done here." The wedding teetered on collapse. Dresses rustled as guests shifted nervously. Someone whispered, "I didn't sign up for this circus." Grandpa slammed his cane once more. The crack cut through the tension. "Enough," he thundered. "This wedding is over. No vows will be spoken while this family stands on poisoned ground." The officiant's face went pale. Slowly he closed his leather-bound book. The hush that followed was suffocating. Just like that, Michael's perfect day crumbled. Guests began to scatter, murmuring, shaking their heads. Some stormed out, others lingered in stunned silence. The wedding had collapsed like a house of cards, and for once, I wasn't left in the rubble. Grandpa placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "It's time to leave this rot behind, Emily," he said quietly. His words were resolute, not angry. Later that evening, away from the chaos, I found myself in the lower garden, Grandma Carmen's sanctuary. Roses she'd planted still bloomed along the fence, fragrant in the cooling dusk. I sat on the worn wooden bench where she used to hum while pruning, clutching the green handkerchief Grandpa had given me. The soil at my feet was dry and cracked, but I ran my hands through it just to feel closer to her. That's when I noticed something buried beneath a rusted tin box. Heart racing, I pried it open. Inside was a letter wrapped in linen, penned in Grandma's familiar cursive. "If you're reading this, Emily, then you already know the truth. They never saw your strength, but I did. This land belongs to the one who knows how to love it back." Tears blurred the words. But I didn't cry from pain. I cried from recognition. For the first time, I felt her voice beside me, her hand guiding mine. Weeks later, the vineyard came alive again, not with designer gowns or champagne, but with neighbors, workers, and friends who remembered what it meant to belong. Tables were set under paper lanterns strung between olive trees. Fresh bread and rosemary lay in rustic baskets. Laughter rose, unforced and genuine. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing glamorous, but pinned to my chest was Grandma's old grapevine brooch. As I poured wine for the people who had labored here for decades, I finally understood what family should be. Grandpa tapped his cane against the riser near the pergola, lifted his glass, and declared clearly, "To Emily, the one who remembered what family is supposed to mean, this vineyard doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to her because she chose love over pride." The crowd erupted in applause, glasses clinking. I raised mine too, though my throat was too tight for words. Later, when the garden emptied and only lantern light remained, I walked alone between the vines. The soil crunched beneath my shoes, the night air smelled of earth and possibility. At the base of the main vine stood a plaque we'd installed that morning for Carmen, for those who bloom after being buried. I touched the brass, then the soil beneath, whispering softly, "Thank you for waiting." For the first time, I didn't feel like a visitor. I didn't feel like an embarrassment. I felt home.